Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up for Friday, February 5th, 2016, the WNW number 225. The big loser in Iowa, and I underscore loser, is none other than Hillary Rodham Clinton. Oh, yeah. You heard she was the winner by 0.2%, that she had won the thing. Even that is in question, that she actually won it all. It's a tiny margin, and now Iowa's biggest newspaper, the Des Moines Register, they're saying, "Hey, this is so small. Listen, we should do a recount. It's 0.2%. Come on." Of course, Hillary Rodham Clinton's campaign, or the Democrats, I should say, have a Democratic chair there that is the chairman of the party in Iowa. Her name is Dr. Andrea Maguire, but on the back of her license plate, she supposedly is a well-known Clinton supporter, Hillary Clinton supporter. On the back of her license plate says HRC 2016. So to say she's a little biased is maybe an understatement. Bernie Sanders also has questions about what went on, but according to Miss Dr. Andrea Maguire, she says no, we're not going to do any. That's the results of the results. I don't know if that'll stand, but the newspaper up there is sure giving her a hard time, and Bernie Sanders is saying, "Now this is a little, it doesn't pass the smell test, whatever." He didn't exactly say that. I'm saying that, but he has questions, and as a lot of people do. I mean, here you have the chair of the Democratic Party in Iowa as somebody who's donated, had a fundraiser at her house for Hillary Clinton. But all that said, Bernie Sanders is the winner. I mean, at one point, Hillary Clinton had him by a couple of, double-digit percentage points. I mean, 20, 30%. Then it was 10%. Then it was wow, 0.2% is, there may have been some cheating going on to get that. I don't know that, but Sanders was the big winner. They basically got the same amount of delegates by just a few. And let me tell you, Hillary Clinton, with all the money that she spent, and all the Soros money, and all that, and all the big-time donations, and her fees that she spoke with at Goldman Sachs and whatever, she wasn't wanting to come down to 6 coin tosses where she won or lost. And that the person that is the chair of the Democratic Party is saying, no to a recount. Hey, maybe there might be even more votes for Hillary Rodham Clinton. She might get a few more delegates. But nope. Sanders was the huge winner going into New Hampshire, who's going to probably win handily. How well can he do after that? I don't know, but he's getting a lot of young people, 6-1, according to one report. 6 young people for every one person Hillary gets at her report. And this is back to my point. You can't tell young people, listen, we blew Social Security, you don't get it, and there are no jobs, and you got to live in your parents' basement till you're 50. You can't tell young people that. You just can't. And meanwhile, the bankers don't get in any kind of trouble whatsoever. But the big problem is, I'm going to talk about in just a second. The big problem. But I want to just tell you about, even though that the newspapers have been in the tank for Hillary Clinton. I mean, here we have the USA Today this past week, and here we have, after, Clinton claims a much better organization, something positive about Hillary Clinton, even though she, in my opinion, as I just laid out, lost, and why I say she, in effect, lost, and she could have a real loss, but boy, she sure wasn't counting on what she got. Trump upset in Iowa. Rubio closes in on his heel. Trump's upset, something negative. The other thing is, what they should have been leading with. Here's another one about Trump. Here's Donald Trump. And here it says, after Iowa, hard to predict, what the media circus will do next. And this is the problem. This is why that newspapers are. This is a media circus. You know why it's a circus? They're not in the show. And they do one negative thing after another to Donald Trump, and they can't kill him. Why? They're not relevant. As I said, the mainstream press is either not relevant or losing its relevant. And here's the biggest, I want to get back to this. And you would never see this on the front page of USA Today, I don't think. But it's the huge problem. And I'm surprised USA Today did cover this, and hats off to them for covering it. And they should have put this on the front page. This is the big question. This is the email albatross, a ticking time bomb for the Clinton campaign. Yeah, this is not just an email problem. It's a national security problem. It is a huge national security problem that she generated, that she caused by having a private server that intelligent officials say was almost assuredly hacked. And so for the time she was Secretary of State, the Russians, the Chinese, I don't know, the Germans, the Saudis, the Iranians, you name it, probably had her intel from this server. And remember, I don't know if you can look this up on the site. It was in a weekly news wrap-up, and it's the first time I brought up Vladimir Putin. And about 2 weeks before 9/11/12, the Benghazi attack, 9/11/12, Putin is out, and I've talked about this before, he's out and giving public quotes on, when you support terrorists, it can blow up in your face. And what happened a couple of weeks later? We had 4 Americans, including our ambassador, murdered and no security. And then we have this 13 hours movie that's fabulous, incidentally. You should see it. It really gives you the layout and how little security was there. There were 2 different compounds. One, the CIA compound, the other one, the annex. That's where Ambassador Stevens was. And, one of the scenes early on in the movie, aerial shots of, whoo, boy, you don't have any security here. I mean, you got 9 acres to cover, and you got 5 guys with some MP4s, and you got nothing. And it was obvious there was no security, but I digress. The email deal is unbelievable, and it is a national security problem, a huge national security problem, not just for the email, the server, the information that got, but now it's expanded into the Clinton Foundation, where allegedly Hillary Clinton used the foundation and used her position as Secretary of State to reward people that gave to her foundation, in effect. And that's why this is a huge deal, is that the email albatross, a ticking time bomb, which, USA Today and the rest of the media ought to put on the front page. But they don't, and I think it's because they have bias. They're in the tank, for a certain party, and you got to be in the tank for the truth, no matter what it is. If you're a journalist. President Obama made his first mosque visit since he was president. I think he missed a huge opportunity. One of the things he said, and let me read this. Here we go. He said this: Muslims, a part of our family. This is coverage in the USA Today. Okay. He also said that there was a, quote, inexcusable political rhetoric against Muslim Americans. Again, inexcusable political rhetoric against Muslim Americans. Oh, what I think is inexcusable? I think it's inexcusable that the President of the United States will not address a serious, bona fide problem, and that is Islamic extremist, Islamic-inspired violence. Now, this isn't just some pie in the sky, according to a few attacks. FBI, 2009, came out and said, hey, listen, 1 in 10 mosques of the 2,000 mosques, that's back in 2009, so that now there are more mosques, but 1 in 10 mosques basically preach violence in the name of Islam. Other reports say it's a much higher percentage, that imams are basically preaching that, saying that violence is okay if it's done in the name of Islam. The FBI has been reported several times. The FBI Director James Comey says they have, open investigations into Islamic extremists and possible Islamic violent flare-ups, camps, whatever you want to call it, in all 50 states. This is a real problem. Is it all Muslims? No, it's not all Muslims, but it's a percentage. And what I don't hear of people in the Muslim community standing up and saying, hey, we need to stop this. Some people do. For example, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, served with distinction. He now has a group out of Arizona, and he is trying to combat Muslim extremism. He's in the Muslim Islamic reformist. He doesn't want all this violence. And a lot of Muslims don't. They don't want violence being taught. They don't want violent jihad or things done in the name of Islam being done. For example, the crazy guy in Islamic garb goes out in the street in Philadelphia recently and shoots a cop 3 times in the shoulder with a 9mm in the name of Islam. Of course, the mayor comes out and says, "Oh, that's not Islam." Well, I beg to differ. And what about the Fort Hood shooter screaming Allah Akbar while he's murdering 13, 14 service people, or 13 or 14 people? Most of them are service people, and wounding a ton other. What about the the recruitment center in Tennessee, where 4 people were shot by a Muslim extremist. Oh, and you can't forget San Bernardino, where they wounded, I don't know, 22 and murdered 14 or 15 people, a husband and wife Muslim extremist. And where did they get this information? Where did they get their extremism from? From a local mosque. From a local mosque. And so there's just not enough people like Dr. Zuhdi Jasser out there saying that we want to reform Islam where we don't have this violence. But you don't see that in the Islamic community, and you certainly don't see it from President Obama. He missed an opportunity to bring up this important point. It's not Islamophobia if you're talking about a segment of Islam that is violent, and it's provable that it's violent, and the imams in a segment of Islam are teaching this stuff not only here in America but much higher percentages overseas. Just look at the Charlie Hebdo shootings or the recent attacks in Paris, if you'd like to, or the mass amounts of rapes in places like Cologne, Germany, with all these Islamic refugees and gangs of people raping women and doing tawdry things. I mean, Europe is boiling over and melting down because of this Islamic refugee crisis. One of the leaders over there said it looks more like a coordinated invasion. Speaking of coordinated invasion, we have our southern borders wide open, and now there was a testimony in Capitol Hill saying that I don't know why even the borders they should just stop all the laws, all the immigration laws. They're not keeping track of them. They're not turning them away. They're not checking them up on them. Not giving deportation court dates. This is all Democrats wanting to get voters. They don't care what happens to the country as long as they're in charge. And if they're in charge of a third world big ball of mess, well then that's okay. The Democrats want to be in charge. This is what this is about. And meanwhile, people like me and taxpayers like you have to pay for this, and if you say anything about it, you're a hater or a bigot or a xenophobic or something like that. This is outrageous. It's really outrageous. Turning to the economy, folks, one of the main things I do here is I do it because the numbers are the numbers. I mean, they get fudged, and there are all kinds of criminal activity and all kinds of interventions by the powers that be and manipulation. But here is the mainstream press, and I just want to start with this. And can you read this here? Let me get in here. Let's get in here really good. Come on, let's get it to focus up. And the autofocus will get it right here in a minute. Come on. There you go. U.S. economy expected to strengthen. U.S. economy this is this past week, folks. U.S. economy expected to strengthen. This is an AP story, Associated Press. U.S. economy expected to strengthen, and are they imbeciles at the AP? Seriously, by any metric you'd like to use, and I'm going to show you several. And I'm back to the Baltic Dry Index up here in the Baltic Dry. It was 1,200. And look at what has happened since 2008 or 9. I think it's 8 and 9 right in here. That's the crisis of '08. And here we have the thing just tumbling. Right here was 480 or so. That was a new all-time low, 20% below any all-time low ever. And then let's just take it on down. Then I was at 360. Now, this past week, another new all-time low to 310. From somewhere up here at 1,200, so a 75-80% drop in the value of the Baltic Dry Index, which is an index of shipping raw materials and goods around the world. Shipping globally is coming to a standstill. Look at this chart. It's off the chart. It's been off the chart. New all-time low. It's probably, I estimate, 25% below its last all-time low. Then if you look at, this is from Federal Reserve, and if you look at look at the chart here overall, okay? This is the 60s. This is money velocity. This is money going through the economy. Greg Mannarino talks about all this stuff, and he'll be the early Sunday release, and we'll talk a little bit about this. But this is the 60s, and here's the Bubbleville that we've been in, and then ever since Bubbleville, since the early 2000, 2000, just before. This is the late 90s. This is the run up to the dot-com boom, and then this is 2000, and then if you come down here, this is money. Look at money velocity, and look at all the way back to the 60s. Look where we are here. And now it's plunging, and it's plunging worse than it ever has, at least on this chart. It's plunging. That is the money flowing through the economy. And yet, if you believe this AP headline, the U.S. economy expected to strengthen. Expected to strengthen. No. And then we have this headline, and this was in Bloomberg this past week. And, the Fed told us, well, we're raising rates because the economy is doing so great. We're going to raise rates just a quarter. We'll be vigilant. That kind of thing. And here's what they're floating, the Fed is. And they floated this on Bloomberg. Fed wants to test how banks would handle negative rates. This is a bona fide Bloomberg headline. This is showing up in the mainstream media. They're warning you they're going negative. They're not going up. They're going down. They're going down because they can't go up. Peter Schiff said if they raise rates, the stock market would tank. Okay, he was right. He'll be up I know as a guest next week, Peter Schiff. He said a lot of things, and you'll want to see him. He's there's a little bit of a sync match with the video and the audio, but it's a brilliant guy. And he has more brilliant things to say about the economy. Here we go. Retail apocalypse in 2016 brings empty stores, empty shelves, and store closings at all across America. And Amazon also tanked. Amazon also didn't do well. So it's not just brick and mortar, but it's big misses by the e-tailers. Baltic Dry talked about that. Continue to make new lows. U.S. factory orders slide for 14 consecutive months as inventory ratio soars to recession cycle highs. Starting in 2016, next headline, the last headline. 2016 with a bang. Challenger Grain Christmas. Challenger reports highest January layoffs since 2009. They're laying people off. Baltic Dry is tanking. Money velocity is tanking. Retail is tanking. And yet the mainstream media is telling us that they expect a great 2016. I don't know how they sleep at night. And of course, what's layering this, what's backstopping the entire economy is basically an economy of fraudulent banks. And here's the latest: Wells Fargo fined $1.2 billion for reckless mortgages. Reckless? How about fraudulent? And nobody at the bank goes to jail, of course, and nobody at the bank really pays a fine. You know who pays this $1.2 billion? Shareholders. Nobody is personally held responsible for this. You mean the doors, the windows, the carpet, the chairs, the computer terminals? They're the ones that did the reckless terminals, and the people inside that bank were along for the ride? This is why Bernie Sanders is resonating with young people. Because the one thing he says, I don't believe in a word, anything else he says about this whole socialism and getting other people to pay for your right to have health care, which means your right to take somebody else's money to pay for your health care. But the one thing he has about is banking reform. And I say you can't have any kind of an economy ever under this kind of a backdrop of fraud and criminal activity and malfeasance. You can't do it. And that's why this scares the heck out of Wall Street. And Greg Mannarino is going to talk about when Bernie Sanders, basically, in my opinion, did so well. The futures reacted negatively the night that the results came in for the Iowa caucuses, the Iowa primary. We'll talk a little bit about that, what that means. A couple other odds and ends here I want to get to, and that is I think I've already talked about the border and how it's wide open, down there. It's like an invasion in the southern border. What else is new? It's what the Democrats want. But let's just talk about 5 reasons why Syria talks are in disarray. This is in the USA Today. And they're having peace talks over there. They have 300,000 people killed since the civil war started. It's basically Hatfields and McCoys, the Sunnis and the Shia. And the problem is that people have chosen sides. Like, the Russians chose the side of the Syrians and Assad, and so did Hezbollah, and so did Iran. And the U.S. and NATO and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other countries chose the other side, and they've been duking it out. And the problem, what they do not mention with the 5 reasons why Syria talks are in disarray. I mean, they did talk about the Russians doubling down and the Saudis wanting to, keep on, fighting the war and all that. But what they didn't talk about was that, one of the reasons why should be the 6th reason why talks are in disarray is that the United States and our allies keep funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Listen, folks, at one time there was probably a Free Syrian Army somewhere that didn't have a violent jihadist bent to it, but that's over. I mean, the Russians and the Iranians and the Hezbollah, they're hunting down anybody who is against Assad and killing them. And so that means the guys need to decide whether you are a Free Syrian Army or ISIS or Al Qaeda. You're all on the same side. And the NATO, Turkey, the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they continue to fund the other side. And a big component, if by now not, and the entire component is ISIS and Al Qaeda. And the mainstream press will not bring that up. They won't do it. Won't bring it up, which I think is pretty disingenuous and, horrible. Somebody wrote me and said, "Hey, could you do an update on the drought situation?" And I got to tell you, if you the good news and bad news, and let's start with the good news. This is the eastern. Here's the Midwest from Carolina all the way out to the Rocky Mountains. And listen, that's even up here in the north. I mean, 2/3, 3/4 of the nation. Great. Now let's get into the what's the problem is, and this is the problem. And check out California. You've seen reports of them getting rain, but listen, every part, look at California, every single part of the state has some level of drought. The deep dark red, of course, is the worst. It's bleeding into Nevada. Nevada also, every part of the state, except for this little corner up here, has some sort of drought. If you go up here to Oregon, the same thing, almost the entire state. But focus on California, folks. And Jerry Brown is concentrating on light rail to... What? I mean, this is serious stuff, folks. And even though it's not being reported on, doesn't mean it's not serious stuff. They are in deep trouble. It's not getting better. And the longer it goes on, the bigger the deficit is and the worse it gets. There was talk about some El Nino coming in and, making everything bright and happy, but you'd have to have years of El Nino dumping rain on you. The last time I talked to one of my contacts out there, it said that they were 256 inches down of rain. That's a lot of rain, folks. And it's probably worse than that now, but it's not getting better. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with all your comments. Have some smart people on there posting links and posting good content, extending the content. Really smart. Thank you for your donations. That helps us out. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, spiritually, physically, and I want to save the best for last. Above all, spiritually, fear not. God is in control. Do not fear. Thanks for supporting USAWatchdog.com.